Hello. We're all being spied on right now by a clandestine group of individuals known as the New World Order. They are watching us from afar. They can hypnotise us if they want to, through remote viewing and mind control. This is, of course, a very bad thing, but we can get our own back. We can remote view them also. Tonight, remote viewing, the viewer and the viewee.
My name's Tim Matthews, and I believe that secret technologies have been developed not only for military use, but also for use against the civilian population.
My name's Tim Reifat, and I believe that British intelligence agencies have developed Soviet-style microwave weapons which they use on members of the general public.
My name is John Beveridge. I believe there is an agenda which is working towards the centralisation of world power.
My name is Ivan Fraser, and I believe we are being manipulated towards a one-world government.
My name is Robert Lamont, and I believe somebody could be looking at your private documents now.
Tim, when did you first know that you were being remote viewed? Was it a gradual realisation or an epiphany?
No, it's a gradual realisation because it's taken me years to really get a handle on this remote viewing technology and how it was developed, because until 1994, 1995, when revelations about the American remote viewing program started to come out, it was all hush-hush and top secret. And I was just informed about these things via people who'd worked in military intelligence and told me that they were using psi warfare. And there were very large projects. And then
Psi warfare?
Psi warfare, yes. A whole branch of, a new branch of warfare which was developed by the Russians. During the 60s, they started spending the second largest part of their defence budget on psi warfare. And what they found out was that the power of the human mind could be used as a tactical and strategic weapon. They found that they could project their awareness to distant locations and actually spy on people psychically, psychic spying. The Americans later called it remote viewing. They then found they could do something called psychic scanning, and that they could actually tap into people's minds and start to read what was going on in people's minds. And the Russians developed a whole range of different research projects to do that. They then started to look at how this worked, and they found that extremely low frequency signals were the key to this technology. And they thought, well, if we can do it naturally, we can do it electronically. So they started using these ELF signals to cause major neurological and physical harm to people. And this resulted in them microwaving the US Embassy in the early 70s. And by the use of microwave beams and these ELF signals imposed upon them, they actually gave half the US Embassy staff cancer, and about a third of them have died from cancer due to the irradiation. And this resulted in the British researching into the use of microwave weapons, and in the 80s mass producing these microwave weapons, which are used by British intelligence now on members of the general public. The Russians then went into the use of psi warfare, not electronics, but psi warfare for actually telepathically hypnotizing people. They found in the 30s that you could actually hypnotize animals and people at a distance. So you could look at a photograph, stare at the photograph of someone, and actually plant suggestions and hypnotize them. They even...
What kind of suggestions?
Don't do such an action. Do such an action.
Well, we were talking about they. So who exactly are they?
Predominantly SIS in the UK, as Special Intelligence Services, MI6, but as Tim mentioned earlier, the security forces of individual countries have been researching this for years, so I should think the big they are those people who are empowered with that kind of technology at hand, and that does create a fusion between the commercial economic market and the military machine. You know, so one complements the other in their own sinister and subversive way.
So I was on the notion of the New World Order as being a very, very small group of individuals, maybe half a dozen people sitting in a room somewhere, but you think it's a very, very large organisation?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you look, I mean, I don't want to go too deeply into the New World Order sort of infrastructure because I'm probably not quite sure about it, and nobody is. But if you look at certain groups behind the power, like the Bilderberg group, you'll notice that a very large amount of predominant world leaders in one field or another are members of this elite group of people. Whereas in the media, these people are negotiating with each other on other matters of economy and land arguments and everything else. But at the very top of the hierarchy, you know, it's quite obvious that they're all actually in bed with each other, as it were.
And these people are remote. I mean, are they just remote viewing us because we're specifically interested in their actions and their ways, or are they remote viewing everybody all the time?
Microwave technology is perfect because with the use of microwave technology, the Russians and later the Americans found that at a flick of a switch, you can control behavior. You can make someone manic, you can make them suicidal, you can make them obsessive, you can make them compliant and submissive, all at the flick of the switch. Now what I found is that the microwave phone network is of exactly the right intensity and of the right pulse modulated microwave frequency to be used for this mind control.
So they do it through mobiles?
Yes, the mobile phone network is perfect and the technology exists to use mobile phones to actually mind control all the mobile phone users in the country in times of trouble. Say there's a riot, people are smashing things and they want to keep the middle classes on board, then they can put the ELF signal for docility and compliance onto the mobile phone network and at a flick of a switch keep all the mobile phone users in the country within that state.
Because this is a broad statement, but rioters, I mean, I've never seen, rioters don't usually use mobiles, do they? Because they're out on the streets and so on. So that's why.
But the middle classes, the rich, well, normal middle classes and rich working class people use mobile phones.
But would they riot anyway, the middle classes? They're not
They
known
might
for
if things got
rioting.
very bad and if the troops were on the street shooting large numbers of the population, which might happen at times of trouble.
And you've got a machine that monitors the microwave in the air.
Yes, we've got, anyone can buy these. What we've got is a frequency counter which can actually measure the frequencies going through your home. And what I've been doing is going around Brighton, which is a hotbed of subversion to organisations like MI5, and actually testing out what's going on. And I found that the 450 megahertz signal in UHF, which was used by Dr. Rossady, who was researching into the use of microwaves for behavioural control. There are large areas of Brighton blanketed by this frequency, and I've been talking to loads of people in the field who are all complaining of symptoms of microwave attack. I found the 450 megahertz signal, you can control their behaviour, make them manic, make them depressed or suicidal. And they also use the 800 megahertz up to 1,000 megahertz frequency, which is used by microwave ovens. At the flick of a switch, the 1,000 megahertz or 800 megahertz signal will give you a headache and nausea, so they can actually make people so ill they can't work or cause trouble.
Because I was actually feeling a little bit ill in the days preceding this debate. And
Yeah.
I was wondering whether I was being remotely
Yes.
manipulated to feel poorly.
No, the British have got an endemic use of microwave weapons, and anyone doing a programme like this, your researchers complained about feeling ill and nauseous and waking up with hangovers. This is something which can be caused by microwave weapons at the specific frequency between 800 and 1,000 megahertz and at the flick of a switch.
So do you think they tried to stop this programme from happening? Because I did have an
haven't been
infected
very
sinus.
successful. I mean, I think the thing about these kinds of technologies is that they can be used obviously militarily because they're stealthy. They can even sort of change colour and so forth. I mean, that's just part of the technology that they've got now, active stealth systems. But the fact is they can use these technologies not only for military purposes, for sort of sneaking in behind the enemy lines and so forth, but they can actually use it against you and me. And I'm sure that if the technology is available for them to do this, then they will do it. Now, you said before, who are these people? I don't think there's a sort of group of people who meet in a room like in the X-Files and sort of sit around smoking lots of cigarettes, deciding upon the way in which the world is to be governed.
Maybe that's where I got my mental...
Well, possibly,
picture
but I think what happens is, I mean, in terms of black aircraft programs, which is what I know about, it's a sort of loose underground structure of people, you know, so they sort of know each other, and it's all done on a compartmented basis. So in other words, the people working on these technologies may not know about the whole technology, they may only know about a bit of it, but the point of the matter is that they aren't going to be able to blow the whistle because they don't know enough.
The point about the New World Order
Yeah.
to understand is that we have a series of different topics where people are coming to a common consensus of agreement, and the methods they use for manipulation, the major method is through compartmentalization. Mind control, but mind control is information control. And if you have a pyramidal system, like the CIA have, like all multinational businesses have, you have some individual or individuals at the top of the pyramid who know the whole system inside out. And the further you get down in the pyramid, the less people know. And you have compartments, multi-level compartments. So the guy in this room doesn't know what the guy in that room's doing. He thinks he's just doing his job. He's doing the best he can.
In America,
you find all these systems, but they come together. The peaks all come together when you research who owns the petrochemical industries, who owns the medical profession via the pharmaceutical industries, who owns the uranium, who owns the war machine, who owns the banks. And you keep coming up with the same people, the same names, who are at the top of this pyramid, the apex. These guys will know a great deal of what is going on the global scale, whereas the guys down the bottom will not know. They're just doing their job. When you go to work, you don't know what the manager's planning for the rest of the year ahead. He does, you don't. And you have all these pyramids coming together, and you have the same names: Rockefeller, Rothschild. They own the vast majority of these industries, which really do control the planet, because they control also the media, the television networks, which put out the news, and that's where most people get their information from.
Now, the one thing I'm slightly sensitive about in the whole New World Order canon is I mean, speaking as a Jewish person myself, it's quite often been linked with anti-Semitism, hasn't it? You know, I'd like to think that isn't something that exists around this table.
I think the thing is, I mean, your point is valid, and you've got to be very careful not to start sort of turning the thing on its head. And I think when we talk about the New World Order, I was always under the impression that it was George Bush who coined the phrase, and people have taken that to mean that, you know, there is a sort of all-encompassing conspiracy, which they might be, justified in doing, considering that Bush was the CIA's man in the White House. So
before George was Hitler, and before Hitler was
well,
Nero.
Exactly. So I mean,
it
you
goes
can
back
take
a long way.
the thing is, you see, people take it back. So the problem is, what we're talking about here is reductionism, and I'm not into that. I mean, I don't think it works like that.
Well, I can certainly put my hand on my heart and say I've never been asked to join an international global Jewish elite.
No,
unfortunately, in a way, because one of the great advantages of being Jewish.
The
and
concept
never
that there's
happened
a
to me.
central committee dominated by Jewish people that rules the world is madness. Basically, what I found out from my research is that
Not by me.
there are, within the West, two main power blocks. There's the British establishment, which has links with the right wing in the States, and is at present funding and pushing forward a massive move to destabilise the middle of the road New World Order in the States, which is associated with President Clinton. The thing is that there's a massive war going on between these two power blocks. The middle-of-the-road American New World Order knows and realises that in order to have a stable society, you need middle-class consensus. Now, if you keep the middle class rich so they can buy designer clothes and they can have the lifestyle they wish, then you do not need a powerful secret police like we have in Britain. You do not need a powerful army like we have in Britain, which can cause civilian suppression. You don't need a powerful police force like we have in Britain using microwave weapons. You in fact get the middle class to support you, and that way your army is there to fight foreign invaders, and you don't have a destabilised internal country where you need civilian suppression, which we're having in Britain. While in Britain, there's a few people, massive landowners, links with the aristocracy and large corporations, that rule this country as if it was their own personal fiefdom. In order to do that, you need a strong police state But since you've got a democracy fronted by Tony Blair and a government, the Labour government, which really doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes and is manipulated, you need secret, covert ways of controlling the population where you can't just cart them away and torture them. So you need microwave weapons to control behaviour if you're running a British-style New World Order.
And it's interesting in terms of that just a couple of weeks ago, I think I'm right in saying that MI5 announced that they were reducing the list of subversives in this country from a mere 100,000 people to only just under 2,000.
How did they reduce the list?
I don't know. I'd love to know. I wonder if
well,
any of
maybe
us
they
are on it,
mind
but-
controlled them.
I'd be more interested to find out how they made the list. In the
Exactly.
first place.
That's so. In other words,
Yeah.
there is the admission that they are interested in keeping certain people under. Now the question then emerges: well, how are they going to do this? Have they got new technologies that they can do it with? And the answer is yes. Are they going to do it? The answer is of course they are.
So it's microwave technology, and it's also, they inject us with
It's a range of
microchips,
technologies.
Ivan.
This has been spoken about. Therapists have pulled out microchips. It's been going on for decades. Therapists who have been investigating abductions, people go and have regression hypnosis, and the regression will uncover some beam of light, loss of control. They'll go to a ship. They'll see. They have experiments performed on them, rectal experiments, etc. Telepathic experiments.
Which has nothing to do with aliens, I should
I'm
point
coming
out.
to that. They'll see all sorts of things. Fetuses being taken away, implantations of babies' fetuses to go away later on to be reabducted, to take away the fetus, etc. And part of this has been the microchip in the back of the head or wherever. Therapists have been pulling these out for a long time. We know from CIA documents they've had chips which they implant in people.
There was a stimoceiver, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Things
Jose
are happening
Delgado
now.
invented it, didn't he?
Yeah,
Years and years ago.
Yeah, people.
1961, the
Yeah.
stimoceiver was implanted in the
I
first
think called
human patient.
electronic dissolution of memory as
Yeah.
well, wasn't there? Which was one of the techniques pioneered, I think, under MK Ultra.
Yeah. This is the important subject.
MK Ultra being
It all comes under MK.
something
In the
we know
60s.
about.
Yeah.
You see, I think what people watching this
Good old
program might
60s.
think is that we're all
Love.
making it up and there's no documentary evidence.
Yeah, you can pull
but
it
the
from the
fact is
CIA's
that
file.
these documents are available under the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, for instance, when the MK Ultra thing came out, and it was a huge scandal, they released 20,000 pages of documents, which Martin Cannon has been one of the people who's looked into mind control and concluded that this sort of alien abduction thing is complete rubbish. And basically what's happening is that certain people are chosen, as I said, some military, some not, for mind control experiments, which leave them
Yeah.
in a
Memory
terrible
implants.
state. They call them wavies because they've waved goodbye to their mind. Now, I think that's been going on for at least 50 years. And, you know, people say, oh, well, you know, they never put implants in people, but yet my dog, our Jack Russell, has got an implant in the back of its neck. So, I mean, you know, we've got these technologies.
Your dog?
My dog, yes. Little Jack Russell, she's got an implant in the back of
buy
her neck.
implants
So
from veterinary surgeons
perish
to
the
track
thought
your
she
dog
sh-
in case you lose it.
perish the thought she should go missing.
So that's just a continuation of the technology that was developed in the field in the
Well, in the
1960s.
70s, I've got an article at
Because
home where they...
before that,
Let me
there
just
was an
check,
operation.
you allowed your Jack Russell to be implanted?
Yes, absolutely. It's perfectly normal. Have you not heard of this?
No, it's the first I've heard of it.
Well, no. Well, you go to your vets and they have a little, a bit like Tim's device down there, actually. And what happens is if your darling dog, in our case Milo, decides that she wants to sort of go for a wander on the main road, then you can go along to the vets. The vets can sort of key in the number and, you know, use whatever it is technology, probably satellite uplink or downlink to trace your dog.
So do you think that in doing that, they put a microchip in the dog's...
I know they did.
That's how it's done.
That's exactly how
It
it's
cost
done.
But for
£35.
purposes of mind control?
No.
no,
But what I'm saying is they can do
Tracking,
that.
yeah.
If you
That's
lose your
alright.
dog, somebody finds it, they can
Yeah.
put a scanner over and have
And
have
MI5
its
put
name
the
and
same
address.
thing in your car so they don't
Yeah,
have to follow
exactly.
you.
So what we're saying
But
is...
literally in my car...
If you're a subversive, your car will have a tracking
Well,
device
I'm
on
all
it.
right because I'm not a subversive.
You are now.
Although it's always,
You have been reclassified.
although subversion is always in the
You're
eye
probably
of
going
the...
to be the 2001st person
Exactly.
on this list now. But,
And do you think it's happening with clothing now?
Yeah, there are definitely little transmitters they implant in your clothes so they can track you around, or they can that will then activate a computer-controlled microwave device. So whenever you pass that specific spot, it will fire at you.
And do we know which shops are doing this?
No, they'll come into your home. There's S1 and S2 of MI5 that break into your home, these departments of MI5, and will actually plant it in your shoes or in your clothing, or they can strip the house down to the floorboards and plant bugs within the walls, and then put it back together again. And when you leave, your house is full of bugs and your clothing is full of transmitters, which will tell them where you go and will actually automatically fire microwave weapons, which they can place around the town at you non-stop, and will actually target you within your home, so they can keep the beam on your brain no matter where you are in the house, because microwave weapons can fire through brick walls as if they're transparent, and millimetre wave scanners can actually pinpoint you in the house, and they've now got computer control devices to actually fire the specific frequency to make you mad or make you ill, no matter where you go in the house, and it won't fire at anyone else.
Do you think they're deliberately trying to make people seem mad who've got subversive
Yes.
beliefs?
That is standard
Well,
policy.
Take abduction scenario. I mean, if you come to me in a normal sense of the word as a therapist and say, look, I've had problems, I keep getting flashbacks, these things are happening to me, it doesn't make sense to me, you know, I've got a certain amount of time lost, can you help? And all of a sudden you describe the classical abduction scenario to me. Now you're concerned from your peers' point of view because you're going to be written off now as one of those lunatic fringe people.
Well, like David Icke and Fergie. I mean, are they two
They're
examples?
classic cases of
Yeah.
people who might have been targeted with microwave weapons.
But the point being is that your story will be so incredible that you'll be written off.
No.
I get complaints from customers. I run a remote viewing business, and they
Yeah.
always complain their mail's opened, and
Yeah.
they complain
I
to
mean,
the post office.
The,
and
the
nothing
phone
happens.
gets cut off, but not when I'm speaking to my mother. It'll get cut off when I'm speaking to the researcher in
This
America,
also goes
or
into
the,
webs-
you know,
the web
or,
area of things.
and that
Well,
kind of thing happens.
So is our email being intercepted?
Emails intercepted.
You've got instant keyword search facilities. And the minute you hit the appropriate keyword, then your mail's intercepted.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Don't
They have a
forget the
whole...
technology
So what are-
we have is
Right.
always at least 25, 30 years
Exactly.
behind what
And
they have.
So what
They
are the
set up a system
keywords
which
that
then
we
put
have?
out the email.
What are the keywords that we have to
Oh, there could be
avoid?
a dictionary full of keywords or organisations, but if you put in psychotronics or psychic warfare, PSI, SRI or anything like that,
Well,
Tim Reeve-
a very good example is when I
Really?
look in.
Yeah,
when
I'm on their list of extremely dangerous people, and all my mails intercepted, and all my telephone calls are recorded in real time, and I'm followed around non-stop by MI5 operatives.
We used to play a game
because
of putting code words on over the phone.
Yeah.
See top secret code words like ultra green, monarch, you know, words like this. You'd hear an audible click, and they're code words, and they trigger a recording system.
I've actually got a photograph of a woman who was photographing my house, and this was a very bizarre incident, to say the least. It was totally by accident. I happened to look out of a house where I used to live. The woman was there. She had a camera. She was facing up at the window, and she'd been obviously taking other photographs. She looked at me, horrified, and just basically walked across the road, started running, got into this van, and just drove off. I mean, you know, that's the kind of thing that happens. And of course, you're sceptical, say, oh, well, that could have been anything.
50% of MI5
You
staff
know.
are women.
Exactly. I mean,
It
and
couldn't
so-
have been anything, though. I mean, maybe they were sort of going to try and tell you.
Well, when she saw
storm
me and I
glass
ran
windows or
after her, I
something.
mean, obviously, you know, if it's the old thing, isn't it? You know, what do these people have to hide? But when you get into certain areas that you're not supposed to get into, funny things start to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, can you teach me how to remote view?
Yeah, I mean,
And by proxy, the audience?
well, as far as remote, I mean, teaching in this environment would be very difficult. I can explain how one, from a hypnotherapist point of view, would remote view using the technical terms. But I mean, at the end of the day, the simplistic point of view is it's a mode of transport. Okay, now if you're out of water and you're walking across the Sahara Desert, and a bus comes past, you want to get on the bus and get out of the desert, or you're going to stay. No, it's all right, I'll make it out on my legs. Well, you know damn well that you're going to have a very short lifespan. So all you're doing on a psychic level is changing the form of transport in the environment around you. Now you've got, I'll keep it as simple as possible, but you've got the main brain waves, okay? Beta is the most active, and we're all sitting here now. Some of us are in theta, probably.
You're in theta.
But the point
Can
being
you
is-
tell whether they're in beta or theta?
Oh yeah, there are certain physiological, from a therapist's point of view, I've got to know from looking at somebody how you know, deep they are in a trance state, and that would tell me basically the wave level that the brain's at, you know, in a very general sense of the word, unless I had them hooked up to a machine particularly, then it would be very difficult, in all honesty. But you've got beta, which is very active, and you're receiving a lot of external stimulus, okay? That, to a remote viewer, is noise, okay? It's interference, okay? As you come down the range, then you're entering the alpha state, which again contains an awful lot of noise when it comes to remote viewing. But you can get snippets, which is where you were saying this is where the 15%, and this is where the 85% goes wrong, because you're getting a lot of extra information that is not applicable to what you're trying to do. But then as you go down into theta, which is basically as far as you can go, and I'll explain why in a minute, because you've still got delta below that. But if you go into theta, you've now reduced all the above noise from external stimulus because you've inverted your thought processes. So as you're lower into theta, what you've got to do to get rid, to make remote viewing successful, is get rid of the idea of self. Okay, the ego gets in the way, and the human ego is the one thing that stops psychic activity. So by the time you're down into deep theta, the hook is basically, for every good remote viewer, and I'm sure they'll all tell you this, is you have to teach yourself mentally to hang on to theta and scoop the information out of delta, which is the universal consciousness, which is the one wave that science knows nothing about, because every time they try and study it, they're looking at an unconscious body.
The Russians use delta for all their psychotronic research.
Exactly. So delta wave research is very prominent within the military forces and the intelligence services, because it's the unknown quantity. And that unknown quantity is where the pool of the universal consciousness. Exactly.
This is where Delta Force comes from. The elite forces in the USA are mind control forces. They're bred for that purpose. They're bred to be psychic warriors, to be physically perfect. They use a great deal of their mental capacity that most of us do not use. And that's where the name Delta Force comes from.
The skill of a remote viewer is the ability to hold on to theta, which is you're in certain contact with awareness.
So you're in theta now. You seem quite theta-ish, John. Are you in theta at the moment?
Yeah, I am actually. Yeah, I'm just taking it all in, listening to what sort of like people are saying.
And if the audience wants to do it, the simple procedure is to sit in an armchair in a reasonably darkened room. They then put on some Baroque music in the background, which the
like a good idea.
Bulgarians found induced the alpha state.
Frequency range.
Baroque music's this classical, very rhythmic music. You then get, if you're using the American method, get a sheet of paper and just start doodling about the target you wish to look at. And then once you've started doodling, you don't actually think about anything you're getting from your remote viewing. You just subconsciously doodle. After that, you start to remotely view again and think of any impressions you get. You list, for example, the non-visual feelings you get, because the visual ones tend to swamp them out. You make a little list of non-visual feelings, auditory feelings, and then the visual feelings. Then you make another list of what you're actually seeing. Is it hard? Is it does it feel woody? And then you go knocking sound, and then it looks brown. And if you're remotely viewing this table, for example.
Well, you know, you've got wood.
Yeah, and then after that, when you get to the fourth stage 4, then you start to look at the information you've got and make a detailed picture. And then you start to examine stage 5 and 6, the actual details, and then try and think, what could that be? But when you're remotely viewing at first, you block out any thoughts of what you might be remotely viewing. As soon as you start to think what it might be that, your remote viewing goes wrong. You just get pure impression, doodle it, make a list, try to fill the list out with your impressions. Don't think at all about it. As soon as you start thinking about it, throw that away, and then go back to just pure impressions. And then you do a detailed drawing and a detailed examination of your impressions and the list of things you've got. And then you finally try to think what that might be.
I mean, do we know when we're being remote viewed?
No, only remote viewing experts know.
When they're being remote viewed. So you know when you're being remote viewed. Are you being remote viewed now?
No.
But were you being remote viewed up in the room with the sandwiches upstairs? Because I know you didn't feel comfortable sitting in that room.
No, but there was evidence of microwave emissions coming through the room.
Because you went and sat in the kitchen?
Yeah, because that didn't have any emissions.
Even though it had a microwave in it?
Yeah, that was dead.
Right.
people who are
I have to
researching into it.
disagree with your assumption that the Russians hold certain technology that the British don't, and the Americans hold certain things the British and the British hold, because I firmly believe that behind these apparent differences, there are a core group of people who know what's going on in the whole situation. Historically, this has been proven, although suppressed, that things like Russian technologies have been jointly passed over to the Americans. Look at the history of Lenin and Trotsky, sent over by the Allies. The Allies funded the war machine in Germany. The same guys, the same companies, American companies, German companies, all the evidence is suggesting that everybody is sharing the same information at a very high elite level. And the differences are smokescreens. The differences are used like the Cold War, the threat of nuclear warfare. The differences are being used to manipulate people, essentially through fear. Fear of a nuclear attack.
Fear example of that. The obvious
fear is the
example
ultimate control.
being Iraq. Who do you think?
Secrecy
where do you think
is
he
the
got the
ultimate
weapons
control.
from? Where did Saddam Hussein get the weapons
We
from?
sold them to them.
We sold them to him. And I'll
Yeah.
tell you another thing. This is
Why?
a very interesting point. If you read a very, very good book by William Burroughs called Critical Mass, it talks about this international trade in technology. Now, the Americans really are the leaders in most technologies. Very
Apart from psi warfare.
yeah, well, quite possibly. Luckily backed up by the British. For instance, Porton Down, part of the Defence Evaluation Research Agency. There are some horrendous things they've got at Porton Down. You know, the sort of thing you don't really want to think about. Those
Like
kinds
what?
of chemical and biological weapons. These are the chemical and biological
Viruses and bacteria that could
Yeah.
kill the entire human population.
Exactly. I mean, and
In
obviously those are
Port
the
Down.
people. Those
Yeah.
are the people who poisoned Greenard Island up off.
With anthrax.
Up in the off
And that was in the
Scottish coast.
40s.
That's the kind of thing they've done there. Now, I mean, obviously, you know, the technologies have been passed on, haven't they?
If
to
Porton
other
Down had an
people.
accident, they could
For
wipe out
instance,
the entire
Iranians
human
now,
population.
this is a good example, the Iranians now have a stealth aircraft, courtesy of the French. Yeah, it was. I know about this.
Very important.
So you see,
because
this is a very
behind
fundamentally important point to
the whole
make.
thing,
The
yeah.
fact is that you have to sell your weapons. I mean, like the Eurofighter, it's an absolute waste of money craft, but it's £40 billion, right? Of which they can push lots of it off into the other
It's a smoke.
Keep asking the question,
you
who
know.
benefits? If you look at who benefits from all of these sales,
Exactly.
you know? And we said at the beginning that we don't want to target individual people as being perhaps responsible, and I don't believe you can do that. I don't believe there's a racial agenda or whatever. I think these guys will use they'll use race, they'll use anything, nationality,
It'll divide
fear,
and rule
that'll
thing, really,
divide,
isn't it?
divide and conquer. This technology, Porton Down, came out of the technology that was used in Nazi Germany.
And the Japanese.
After the war, this technology came out in a thing called Operation Paperclip. And they relocated Nazi rocket scientists, they relocated mind control
And
scientists.
the Germans also invented
Mengele,
flying saucers,
these
and
people,
they were taken up to
They
Canada.
put them in
It's the
NASA.
old story.
Listen, this is very important. They put them in NASA. They put them in the universities. They had Nazi mind control scientists.
You can actually
working
trace
in
these
Harvard,
people.
working
You can trace
in
these people from Germany to Fort Bliss in Texas.
I'm busy doing that, if you
From
let
where
me.
they went to work at Lockheed. There was a guy called Walter Mather. He was involved in the German flying saucer program. He ended up working for A.V. Rowe and Company. They developed a flying saucer that's just been made public called
The
Project
New World Order is a lot
Project
more than just
Silverbug.
flying
Oh,
saucers.
no, and of course it is. But the
It's
fact of the matter is that is
essentially
a
about mind
case
control. I'm busy
study.
trying to tell you where the mind control technology
exactly.
came from.
What I think we need in this,
If you'll
this
shut
sort
up.
of discussion is we need case studies. For instance, look at Manuel Noriega, that lovely man from Panama. He was a good friend of the Americans. And then suddenly he was the enemy of the Americans. And look what they did to him. Did they not play rock music at like, you know, huge volume outside his building?
They
Well, that's a very sort of basic
rabbits
sort
being
of
killed
psychological
at a
warfare.
high
What, they
type
played the
operation,
sound
isn't
of rabbits being
Yeah.
killed.
Yeah, to drive him out of his mind.
it? I thought
Oh,
it was
that's
rock
a terrible
music.
thing.
It's a
Maybe they
terrible
should have
thing.
paid him some
And
rock
terrible
music.
things
It would have been
happen.
Did they
lovely.
choose rabbits because they die in a particularly vocal...
Tortured rabbits. Killed
There's actually a
rabbits being
interesting
killed.
story about rabbits. That Russians did an experiment. I think it's back in the 60s. They took a female rabbit and her babies, and they wired the female rabbit up and the babies up, and they took the babies down in the submarine and killed them one by one. And each time they killed one of the babies, it registered the brainwaves of the mother rabbit. So it's just
on the EEG of the brainwave. The brainwave jumped every time the progeny of the
There is
mother
an
rabbit was
explanation
killed.
for that, psychological explanation, and that is that most animals on the planet lack, in the brainwave scan spectrum range, the beta wave. Okay, they're much more in tune to the environment around them and the so-called unconscious as opposed to the subconscious. Okay, and so therefore, however crazy it may seem to the public, animals have the capability of being a lot more psychic than humans who get interference from this beta block. You know, people are going to think, oh, there's a bunch of lunatics talking about psychic pets. But the bottom line is that if you look back on normal evolutionary lines, it's perfectly feasible for this to occur because we've come to depend on technology in our surroundings and we've let technology do our work for us, so we've basically got lazy. And that in itself, through evolutionary processes, probably added more volume to the beta range because of that. Whereas animals are still surviving in their natural habitat. They have no use for the beta range or the logical paths that beta creates. So therefore, they're still...
You mean a more natural way of thinking?
Yeah, exactly. But that's what remote viewing is all about, a natural way of thinking. In the Vietnam War, when the young boys, average age 19, they were getting shot at constantly, their lifespan was a couple of weeks if they were lucky in that particular situation. But what they noticed at the same time was that some of these guys that had actually been there a little bit longer than statistics should have dictated, they should have been carried home dead a few weeks previously, they showed amazing ability of psychic phenomena because they were literally moving through reflex action out the way of a bullet before the bullet arrived with some kind of sixth sense. And some of the group leaders were actually observing, and they've got it on film, military film, and some of these guys were surviving on instinct rather than what what the military had taught them went out the window because of the trauma that was imposed upon them over that such intense period of time. And they were then working on instinct, which is, again...
No doubt that got them interested in the possibilities of developing that kind of thing, and this is what we're probably
talking about now. Can you imagine the world
now.
wars? We've actually been selectively breeding psychic males in the West. Second World War, First World War, killed them, and in the Vietnam War, been killing Western men by the droves, and the ones that are the most psychic are the ones that survive. So we find with military remote viewers in the States, they're mainly male.
We're getting the impression here that women were sort of out of this. And
no, women have been selectively suppressed with psi abilities due to the Middle Ages. They burnt them by the million during the Middle Ages. Any woman who's displayed psychic abilities has either been burnt or has been less likely to reproduce because she wouldn't get a decent husband. So there has been selective pressure on females within the West to deselect for psi genes. But for the males, there's been massive selection for psi genes because of the massive amount of warfare. And that's the basic trend.
I was wondering if you know any women who can remote
from the abduction scenario, it's always the female line, and the communication is telepathic in origin. So you've still got a very strong argument for a complete line of female...
Not many women in UFO research. Maybe they're too sensible to get involved in it or something.
Feminine energy is, to me, one of the fundamental aspects of the New World Order too. And you can trace this historically, suppression of females through religions and just hierarchies of maledom. There are energy fields on this planet, and they have biases towards male and female, negative and positive. And what's happened throughout history is the feminine has been suppressed. There's been some great work done recently on the lineage of the Davidic line, Jesus and things being passed down. What's very much to the fore now is the understanding that the feminine aspect of worship has been suppressed. Ancient races were often matriarchal, and the bloodlines that are passed down are not just patrilinear, but they are matrilinear. Genetically, they have a bearing. But in our society today, we tend to just to look at who's your father. You know, it's a very patriarchal line, and they trace the fathers all the way through. Miss out the women, because there is fundamental knowledge of female energy that has been suppressed. Fundamental knowledge which relates to the reason why Diana was killed. The bloodlines involved in Diana's lineage can be traced back all the way through people in France called the Merovingians, which had been traced back to Jesus, which has been traced back to the Davidic line.
I don't see how you can trace these things back. I mean, it's reductionism. It sounds a bit like a sort of
It's a whole
genetic,
series
sort of
of
racist type argument. I mean,
it's
the
a
fact
whole
is
series of
if we're talking about
investigations
remote
called
viewing,
history.
if we're talking about remote viewing,
Historians
surely we're
do
talking
this.
about people depending
That's what
upon your
history is.
depending upon your point
Every
of view.
time I say
People are either
something
the
that's very important, you interrupt and break the argument. Every time there's some fundamental information that's pertaining to this, you interrupt.
Well, I'm trying to understand
and
where you're coming
suppress
from
everything
here,
that I feel is so important.
No, because the thing is, you see, I'm trying to
because
understand.
I cannot get
We've got all this. We've got all this stuff about.
Do you think he's been remote viewed to
I think
interrupt
he's
you?
actually. I honestly think he is a plant to whenever anybody comes up with some really serious, important information, he will talk over the top of them. And I picked this up in the green room about him. I am actually quite sensitive and psychic myself, and I can see quite
I didn't know that.
a range of energies, and I do believe that this is part of his agenda here today.
It must be the
honestly
implants
believe
up my
that.
nose. But I mean, I think the thing is, you see, we've
And
got
he's pulled it off to a T today. Every
We've
time
got-
the important stuff's come up,
well, certainly
he's
not.
kept the argument on the UFOs, the lesser New World Order information. There's so much more to the New World Order than just UFOs.
Of
and
course there
remote
is, and I agreed with you.
viewing.
We're talking
It's
about a
huge
wide
topic
range
that
of
we need
subjects
to
here.
explore the other areas of, I feel.
One thing that concerns me about remote viewing is we've heard very sinister views, which, as far as I'm concerned, are perfectly true and not beyond the bounds of possibility. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, they're fact. But it seems a shame that we constantly strive to find ways to destroy our fellow human beings when remote viewing could just as well be used for fantastic medical advances.
Yeah. May I interject?
Yeah.
Basically, what I found from my research is that there's a morphogenetic field around the body which is actually detached from the body for remote viewing. This morphogenetic field is the one which cell developmental biologists have found and actually controls a little group of fertilized eggs turning into hair cells and eye cells and skin cells. Now, if this field is the one used for remote viewing, then it can control any part of cellular anatomy, and it can control the genes and can switch them on or off or actually change them. If we think of remote viewing as a meme which can spread through the population, then we can actually give the general population a means by which they can heal themselves, extend their lifespan, and actually change their genetic constitution to make themselves stronger, more intelligent, fitter, get rid of genetic defects.
Surely, first of all, we have to start. I mean, that's what you're saying is right. I totally agree with you. Yeah? But before we start, everybody can start accessing this. Then surely society has to change.
No, not at all. What is needed? I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that what you need is bridges connecting it to science, because at the moment it's new age rubbish.
There is a consciousness within science that rejects anything that isn't part of the status quo.
Exactly.
The status quo is what the New World Order needs to maintain to keep its power, and it does that through secrecy. This knowledge of how the mind works, this knowledge of the morphogenic field, I can see the morphogenic field. I'm a healer, I lay my hands on people, cells are regenerated, knee cartilages regenerate. I put my hands on people, this happens.
But you personally?
It's medically
a healer
impossible.
like him can do that.
Scientifically impossible for knee cartilage to regenerate. I've got x-rays to show it, you know. This stuff, this fundamental information that you, everybody here, everybody in this city, everybody in the world is capable of putting their hands on somebody and healing them, is capable of manifesting certain realities via mind power within reality. This is what a lot of religions originally were trying to tell us about. They've been manipulated by the same force or forces.
You need
Which
to explain
now-
that this is not faith healing.
That's
No,
why
it's
remote
nothing to do
viewing.
with faith.
That's why
That's what
remote
I'm saying,
viewing is so
it's-
worrying to the new world
I need
order.
faith to do it.
Because they can't say it doesn't exist, because the superpowers, Russia spent the second largest part of its defence budget on it, America spent millions on it. They can't say you're making this up. Now, if you're not making it up and they've proved that remote viewing works, then you destroy that paradigm and they've got no defence. It basically works, the military are doing it, they've spent all this money on it. This is the science behind it. Now, what are you going to do about it? Well, possibly couldn't. We're getting Robert Yan proving telekinesis works. He's actually influencing machines, the students are, and they've proved that there is some correlation. They've proved precognition in the States. They actually show you've got a pack of cards, some with nudies in, and just before the nudie picture comes up from your pastoral pack, then the EEG and the brainwave and heart rate jumps 5 seconds before you see it. So they've proved that precognition works. to them.
I think all this is coming about now because of now the switch from the scientific community to the recognition of quantum physics.
Yep.
And we're able now to explain some of Einstein's hiccups, because he obviously stated that, like, you know, you can't travel faster than the speed of light. But as a remote viewer, if I think of Mars, I'm there before the light hits me.
Yeah.
So who's travelling faster?
Yep.
Yep.
You know, so the consciousness of a person is the vehicle in which one can travel. You know, we're still hanging around on fossil fuels, which is ridiculous. You know,
Again, that ties into exactly what I said before, that what we're talking about is the maintenance of an economic system. And obviously, what Tim seems to be saying then is that these technologies are being suppressed precisely because they may alter the status quo,
And
which is that these people, whomever they are, have built this power up over a considerable period of time, and that they are trying to sort of hold on to it. And this new kind of technology, and possibly if you call remote viewing a sort of consciousness type thing, is threatening them.
Biophysics.
Under these circumstances, the only problem I have with that is then why did they allow it to become public? Or is it like all these things, you can't keep secrets?
You
I
can't
think
keep
we
secrets.
come to a point of evolution where these natural abilities can no longer be suppressed. And we come to a point of evolution where we've learned a great deal. It's a sea of energy all around us, within us, without us. And we are picking up on this new information. Now, people start putting hands on people, they start being healed. People start suddenly seeing we call morphogenic field, I would call the aura or the etheric field. They start seeing this and they say, well, science hasn't explained it. Then they start questioning, well, this is how I came to it largely. I started healing people. Now, I have no basis. Where are the books that tell
Russian
me this
research
stuff?
actually has done massive amounts of research on these fields. They've actually got Kirlian scanners, whole range of devices, auric scanners. They've got so much research they've done since the 60s, the general public wouldn't believe it. What I find...
It has to come out at this time.
Yeah.
Do you still think that Tim's a plan? Because he hasn't interrupted you for the last 20 minutes or so at all, not once.
It could just be because I'm sometimes impolite.
It could be.
It is.
It could
But is impoliteness something that could be...
I think the problem with people when they believe there's a conspiracy, and of course there is, they tend to believe that, you know, other people who aren't involved in it are involved in it because, you know, that's the sort of thinking. I mean, obviously, if my mail is intercepted and I have these things going on, and everybody has examples, don't they, of when strange things have happened to them and people have said, then you start looking over your shoulder a lot more. I mean, I think
they're normal.
I think that's what it is. You
They're
know,
normal.
But
This
if
is what
the
happens in the UK.
But if the microwaves could instill a sense of melancholia or
Paranoia.
rage, paranoia, also something like impoliteness,
Or disputation.
really disputation also.
Exactly.
Now, as you all know, there was going to be a sixth person here who would have been sitting where your microwave machine is sitting, Graham, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that anything sinister's happened to him. I'm sure he just missed the train from East Grinstead. But nonetheless, does it make you fear, and all this information that you have, does it make you fear for your own safeties?
Not at all.
No.
Not at all. This is the fundamental part about the information that we're aware of. We need to get it out. If we feared, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for anybody else. If I feared, I wouldn't do it. If I feared I couldn't do it, they know this. We've got a basic sort of tyranny based upon fear on this planet. Afraid of what my friends will think, afraid of what will happen to me if I do this, if I do that, you know, and we walk a very fine line, but certain individuals are prepared to walk outside of that line. And once you let go of fear, the major point of control is gone.
Fear, Tim?
No, I'd say it's brilliant. I mean, when MI5 started using these microwave weapons in Brighton on the vagrants, on the general population, and actually started using microwave weapons to stop me writing this book on psi warfare, I saw it as brilliant because it's great publicity. Once the book's out, I'll be publicising left, right and centre how MI5 uses microwave weapons on the British public and how they use these sort of weapons to harass people who are releasing information, and how Britain is a shining example to the world of how not to be. And I'm in contact with lots of the media, and they're all up for the story. So I'd say you have to use what they're using against you, against them. So it's a national scandal that we've got microwaves being used against the public. So get it out there. Let as many people as possible know about it, and that if they say on the phone the wrong thing, they suddenly might feel like you're researchers, or they might wake up in the morning with a stinking headache and terrible nausea because microwave weapons would have been used against them. The thing is, in this country, anyone who rocks the boat, and that can be any of the middle class, is a prime target for these microwave weapons.
Well, look at the Greenham Common women. I mean, they were nearly all middle class, you know, and they were sort of getting suntans in winter, weren't they?
Yep.
And that was I think that was probably one of the first examples where the Americans used it on, you know, people, you know, more sort of directly. And I've spoken to a couple of, you know, the Greenham Common women, and they sort of confirm that this is what happened. And under those circumstances, I mean, I would say, well, I am a bit concerned about it, but there's probably nothing I can do about it apart from continue to sort of lift the lid on these various technological secrets in the best way that I know how.
And Robert, do you fear for your personal
As far as
safety?
fear is concerned, no. I think I would have, if it was going to be a one-to-one between me and somebody from whatever authority, I think I would have got it by now after we published the Salisbury Plain story last year. However, I don't discount the fact, as I suppose the people here, that we are being monitored very closely, the ones that shout the loudest.
And finally, John.
No, I'm not really worried about it. Part of me's, I don't think I'm important enough for them to worry about. You know, I'm no threat to them really. I'm just got a few ideas. No, I mean, they don't really scare me. Not really.
Okay. Well, thank you.